How to get high ticket coaching clients without sales calls, leveraging the no call conversion code. What's up everyone? My name's Jamie Gardiner and this presentation is all about how you can ditch sales calls in your coaching business and basically start to free up your calendar and acquire high ticket clients without the need to hop on 10 to 15, 20 plus strategy sessions each and every week. Now, what I will say before I dive into any of this stuff is if you are new in your journey, look, there is nothing wrong with sales calls. I've taken thousands of them in my time. I started in sales way back in 2009 in my corporate career. I've sold in excess of 8 figures both on and offline, and the majority of that has been done via face-to-face presentations or Zoom or calls. Nothing wrong with it. In fact, I would argue it's probably one of the most efficient ways you can get started in terms of acquiring high ticket clients. However, if you're an existing client and you've got 10, 20, 30K per month or more, and you're looking to trim down what you're doing, maybe not exhaust yourself so much with the amount of sales calls you do have throughout the course of the week, then this is going to be absolutely ideal for what you're looking for. Now, we're going to cover a couple of things. First and foremost, there's a hidden cost of sales calls, in my opinion. I'm going to cover those things. Why the traditional sales model breaks for solopreneurs, how to ditch sales calls in your coaching high-ticket business, what you need to have in place to make this whole process work, how to put it all together, the downside of no sales calls in your process. And so this is something that is probably not spoken about that much. However, there is actually a downside to it, and I'm going to explain what that is so you can work out at the end of this presentation whether or not you want to go ahead and start to look at adopting this type of strategy in your business, or if you're on the other side of it and basically you're loving calls and you love all that type of stuff, at least you're going to know the good, the bad, the ugly of either way. I'm going to go through a bit of a conclusion as well. Now, before I dive into all this stuff here, if you and I haven't connected yet, my name is Jamie Gardiner. I've been involved in online marketing since 2011, and I'll spare you the sob story about how hard it was and how life was terrible, blah, blah. What I will tell you is that I've had my fair share of setbacks along the way. I even went bankrupt and all sorts of crazy stuff happened throughout my journey, but in late 2019, things started working out. I went from zero to my first $1,000 day in just 7 days, managed to repeat that the next day, and then within 14 months, we'd surpassed $1 million through ClickFunnels to acquire the ClickFunnels 2 Common Club Award that you can see behind me there. I've gone on to serve over 200 million. That's not the right answer. 918 plus students at this point, and helped folks go from everywhere from a couple of $1,000 extra per month right through to scaling as much as $60,000 plus per month with their coaching or consulting business, as well as consulting for a bunch of clients and their content and marketing strategies as well. So all that being said, thank you for sparing me the humility of talking about myself while I go through that stuff. Let's dive straight into it. Hidden costs of sales calls, first and foremost. So lost time in scheduling. Now, assume you do it one of two ways. You either got a call funnel where someone watches a little presentation like this and there's an option to book a call with the team below. So that might be one way. It's a call funnel. Or you go back and forth in the DMs, etc., or the emails, whatever it is, and you lock in a time to chat with that person. So that's one form of lost time in scheduling. You also don't control your calendar that well, and even though yes, you can time block, I get that, but that means that you're also got to weigh up whether or not you're going to limit when people can book so that you can make more revenue or control your time, if that makes sense, right? Next one is no shows and cancellations. Now, I know for myself, it didn't matter how well oiled my machine was, there would still be people that for whatever reason, they would book in and they would just waste your time by not showing up. I still loathe those people to my dying day. I think it's highly disrespectful, but it still happens, right? And so of course you can mitigate this. I remember one particular sales call I was on of another vendor, and they emailed me, SMS'd me, hit me up on Messenger, they called me on WhatsApp 1 hour prior and 10 minutes prior to the call, and then eventually got the Zoom link. And I thought that's a little bit of overkill, but even then, I'm sure there's still people that fall through the gaps that don't actually rock up to those things as well. So that's another thing, you don't control your calendar when it comes to that. Energy drain from constantly selling. So say for example, your average week goes by and you might have 5 to 10 sales presentations throughout the course of the average week. And in that state, you are constantly having to dig the information out of your prospects. Sometimes you get in a situation where you've got good energy, they do not have good energy, or you've just eaten lunch, so you're feeling a bit tired and cranky. On the other side, they also are tired and cranky, and so they're not really giving you many answers, and you're like trying to dig out of them. It can be really, really draining from a consciousness level, in my opinion and my experience. And so that's another thing that is a bit of a downside when it comes to sales calls as well. Also, you got to weigh up whether or not you want to be a solopreneur or build a team. Now, nothing wrong with building a team, by the way, but every time you acquire a new team member, of course, you are now creating more bloat within your business. You're lowering the profit margins, and you're also giving a portion of your margin away to the closer. Now, of course, the benefit is you do free up your time, but for me personally, I didn't want the responsibility of that. I also didn't want to basically lose track of what people were saying in my business to get the person to buy it, basically. And so I know some of the calls I've been on for other entrepreneurs, I've thought, I don't know how you get away with saying this stuff. Like, that's just unbelievable. And so I didn't want that, me personally. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm either going to grow as an entrepreneur, solopreneur, and max that out. And, depending on the price point of your offer, you might cap out 1 to 200K per month, potentially. I'm not too sure. I haven't actually scaled to those figures myself. Or, you can say, okay, well, I'm not going to get all that business bloat and these margins and these moving parts I now need to manage. I'm just going to keep it really simple, right? And so that's what I decided to do anyway. Cool. Okay, so the traditional sales call model. It's designed on this thing where, let's say you watch a presentation, you go, you know what, I think I need this. I'm going to hop on a call. And what happens is this information gatekeeping. It's like, I'm not going to tell you about my program and my offer and my coaching at all until the last 10 minutes of our presentation, our time together. And then that little 10-minute window, now all of a sudden you've got to make this decision on whether you're going to spend $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 on a coaching offer, right? It just blows my mind. And of course, I've been on the other side of that as well. I've given presentations when it's like that. And I've always had this really, really soft approach. And it used to piss off my bosses when I was in the corporate world, because I'd be like, look, take your time, go away and think about it. Now, I knew I was losing revenue from doing that. I knew it because, in my opinion, I would rather someone hops off the call and they come back and make an informed decision rather than them feeling like they have been forced into doing something they didn't want to do in the first place, right? And I think a lot of people have the same perspective when it comes to sales, generally speaking, right? High pressure decisions, which are kind of covered there anyway. It's like that thing like, okay, now I've asked all these 1,000 questions out of you, and now I've given a little presentation, and by the way, here's the price is 10 grand. So are you jumping in or what? Right? Like, it's this kind of crazy thing, and it's almost this weird thing where, like, real life, we don't typically make decisions like that. Especially when it comes to something that has a financial outlay, we like to review things, we like to make decisions as in an informed way. And I found, interestingly enough, when I switched to this model as well, I got better clients. Because everything's transparent. Like, there's nothing hidden. There's no kind of like, oh gosh, if I get on this call and then all of a sudden, bang, it's like this crazy price they weren't experiencing or expecting. There's no kind of big surprise. Like, everything's out front. They're like, well, here's the price. You can get involved for X amount. And that's why, if you've followed any of my content, I often mention, my one-on-one stuff, it ranges from $1,000 right up to 15,000. Why is that? Because I'm trying to get people used to price, and so there's no like crazy surprises and false expectations when they hop on a call, or, for example, not that I take calls anymore, but no kind of craziness when they hop on a call back in the day, and they'd be like, oh my god, I can't believe you charge $1,000 per hour, whatever it is, right? So there's no misaligned expectations as well, right? Time sensitive for both parties, right? So it's often this thing, and again, it comes back to the high pressure things like, hey, well, you've got to make a decision now because clock's ticking. Now, what I do still do is leverage time sensitive decisions for my people, but I give them a little bit more time. I give them a little bit more run-in when it comes to the information that they have available at that point as well. Limited scalability, because I think if you are out there, like I say, the decision becomes, well, am I going to build a big chunky team? And then, of course, I have to have a ton of lead flow to make sure that is the case, as well as dealing with all these management issues and bloat and training and yada, 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 right? Also, psychological barriers for prospects. So there is a resistance for people hopping on calls. I can feel it. I know it for myself. Like, I don't like hopping on calls, especially when I've got some, smarmy young person and they're just like, you got to buy this or else you're going to die. It's the worst thing ever if you don't buy it. And I'm like, well, I don't care who you are and what type of pressure you're trying to apply. It's not really how I'm going to make a decision when it comes to my business, right? And I think a lot of people can relate to that. Transparent model, a little bit different. So upfront about information sharing. Again, coming back to the pricing of my coaching, for example, I will mention that on a pretty consistent basis, because I want people to know, well, that's the expectation, right? You can get involved for $1,200. Like, it's, that's the thing. If you want to get started, that's kind of the starting point. Client self-selection. So no one's going to feel forced to be part of this, and especially going back to the idea of having closers and whatnot. I lose control if I have a closer or a setter. I don't think I'd ever hire a setter, because I've seen what they say to me to try and get me on calls. I'm like, that is just no way, and they just lie. There's like blatant lie, and I think, is that the representation I want of my brand and my business out there? That this person is willing to lie to get someone on a call so they can pay their however much it is per booked call. No, absolutely not. That does more brand damage in the long run, if you ask me. So, client self-selection, they can choose whether or not they want to proceed with anything. It's informed decision making. So typically I would get a better clientele, right? They're not like, oh, and this, because I feel pressure to make this work, I need to make $1 billion the next week, or else, life is going to implode. No, they're more logical. They're better clientele. They're more sophisticated, and that's exactly the whole point. It is also scalable. In some degree now, and I say scalable within the realms of being a solopreneur. Like, I don't really want a big team. I don't want to manage a whole bunch of people. In my opinion, it's scalable to where I would like it to be, and that's the kind of the main thing. Also, there is a ton of trust building through transparency as well, right? So you're not hiding anything. It's not like, oh, and here's my secret price, and only I can, I'm only going to tell you at the end of the call. Doesn't really happen like that. Now, what I will say, all that stuff works. By the way, all the opposite of what I just said works. I'm at a point in my life and my business and my career where I'm done with the games. I'm done with all that stuff. I know the psychological impact of it. I just rather attract a different type of crowd, even if it means I earn less money in the long run. That's absolutely fine with me. I know who I'd prefer to work with. So, complete offer transparency. So, give a detailed service breakdown, or outcome at least anyway. So exactly what's included, what's not included, the levels of support, access methods, the time commitments, things like that. Clear deliverables on timeline. Deliverables timeline. Yes, I did say it right. So, when are certain things going to happen? And it could be that, okay, look, for the first 60 days together, what we're going to do is do X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, and by the end of the 60 days, this is what I anticipate should look like for you. Do you want to go ahead, right? Support mechanisms explained, what type of support you're offering. Is it DM support? Is it chat support? Is it email support? Is it a group? Things like that. And there's an example of an offer page. I've actually got a special discount running at the moment for one of my programs called the Ultimate Marketing Mastermind. May well be expired by the time you get to that, but you can have a look at what the offer doc originally looked like anyway. Go check that out, and the link's below if you want to kind of grab that. Also, a frequently asked questions section addressing common concerns. I personally don't have that, because I'd like to think that all the information is either public through the way that I'm communicating in my content, or on the actual offer itself, right? If people do have questions, I just invite them, because I think it's better to handle those on a more one-to-one basis. And what you will find anyway a lot of the time the questions are just logistics anyway. It's just like, hey, what time, is there going to be replays of this thing? What time is the time zone for that thing? Things like that. It's not usually too complex, right? Outcome clarity. So they know, before they even jumped into anything, what their expectations should be. What they can actually expect. Timeframes for different milestones. You choose whether or not you put that in there. The thing that I've come to learn with my own coaching is that, as much as it would be great to take, hello, new coaching student, please go do the work and do the thing, and then by week 3 you're going to get that, week 4 you're going to get that, blah, blah. But human nature and life being what it is, I know that that's not something I can control, and nor would I really want to either. There's also the element of required client actions and potential roadblocks and solutions there as well, right? So that's, again, coming back to transparency. It's like, well, like I was saying, I'm going to cover why certain elements of the no-call conversion code are not as great as what people might look from the outside in. But, again, that's the reason why I put it there, because I'd rather just be, fully transparent so you can be informed. Upfront pricing strategy. And again, I mention it quite often in my content. This is how much my coaching is, blah blah blah. People pay me X for X, things like that, because it's transparent. It also, and again, it aligns expectations. There's no kind of like big surprises when someone hits the sales page and they're like, oh my god, I didn't know it was going to be $1 billion. I'm only scraping together my last 20 mil. Like, it's kind of like that. I'm clearly joking or exaggerating those figures, shall we say. Package options, payment plans. If you can get people to buy into price, it's just a lot easier for the rest of it as well. Additional costs, if there are any, do they need technology? Me personally, I love the idea of getting started without the need to have complex tech in the way, things like that. Comparison with market rates, I don't really put that in there, to be perfectly honest, because I don't think it's necessary. It's about me and how I serve my brand, and this is where the next part is actually more relevant, because what I prefer to do is have a value justification framework. Now what that means is basically, if you look at the cost of inertia, the cost of not doing things, the cost of their current problem, and also the benefit and the value that your solution can create, then that's basically what we call a value justification framework. So first and foremost, problem cost connection. It's a really, really big one. So quantifying the current cost of their problem. Now, this might seem somewhat manipulative. Some folks kind of get their back up about this stuff, and they think it's kind of like a bit of gaslighting from coaches, like, oh, how much is it costing you not to do this thing? But it's actually the truth, though, a lot of the time. It's like, well, how long are you going to live with this decision of not doing the thing that you know is going to get you the result that you want? Right? If you are stuck going, oh, I don't want to give up a couple of grand to buy this thing, to do the thing that's going to get me a potential 10 to 15K per month, it's sort of like weighing up the opportunity cost, as it were. An example there is, companies losing 10K a month on inefficient ad spend. That's a really good example, because that's something like, if I'm a company and I know I'm spending 10K a month on highly inefficient ad spend, I'm only getting like 100 leads per month, so each lead's costing me $100. I'm like, yeah, I can see that if I was able to halve the cost or quarter the cost or 1/8 the cost of my lead flow, then of course I'm going to get way more leads and my business is going to bloom with the same ad spend, right? So that's actually a big pain point for me at that point. Show both direct costs, so money spent, indirect costs, which is something that I try to put in a lot of my content as well. So things like time costs, that's something that we're never going to get back, right? We cannot get time back. We can get money back, and that's why for me, like, I've just jumped into a new venture recently as part of my business as I'm expanding, want more income streams, so I'm starting to get into things like newsletters, which I've done a lot of email marketing over the years, but specifically when it comes to newsletters, not so much. And so when I found a guy who was crushing it, making a couple $100,000 a year, if not more, I'm not entirely sure what his official stats were, but he's been doing it for a lot of time, a lot of years. He's getting the results that I want in that industry, knows his stuff, and I was like, bang, the thing that I can't get back is time, but I can always get money back. I would rather exchange the thing that I can always get back, money, for the thing that I can't, which is time, right? So I want to compress down the time it takes for me to get the results, which it has. And thankfully, with his guidance, I've been able to take the learning curve and go, squish that right down, right? So that's something I talk about a lot. That's the missed opportunities and indirect costs, I guess. Solution value stack. So break down your solution into tangible components. Each component should have clear monetary value as well. So as an example, you guys have probably already seen a stack slide before. Ad spend audit, for example, custom strategy, weekly, blah, 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 this much total package, 75, 100 plus monthly support, right? So kind of gives you that idea of like, well, it's not just like this randomized figure that you pulled out of thin air. It's like, well, here's the reason why. ROI timeline, show when clients can expect returns. Now, I'm in specifically the kind of like coaching, make money online type area, as a lot of us are. And so I'm very cautious about doing this part. I don't want to say to people, I will, give me 90 days, I will show you how to make 30 grand, right? I can, and I have with certain clients before, but I can't guarantee that. That's not the norm, right? And I would be very, very wary if you start to see this type of advertising out there. And I think most people are getting a bit more sophisticated. So we kind of see through the noise these days. It's sort of like, oh, it seems a bit too good to be true. And that's that old saying, right? If something's too good to be true, more often than not, it actually is. So, an example could be, my clients see positive results by month 2, ROI by positive ROI by month two, right? So that is a way where you're not necessarily looking at putting a specific dollar figure on it. Now that is also a factual statement on a lot of my offer creation, offer docs, sorry. I would put things like, with the right audience, that might be just 1 to 2 sales, who knows, they might be in your existing audience. And that's just to allude to the idea, like, well, yeah, that could be the case, right? Which is very true for so many of my clients. They'll jump in, they'll be like, oh, I just need to do that and that. Yep, and then they've made their investment back like that easy, right? But I don't want to guarantee that, so this is just a way that you can do that. Include specific milestones if you so inclined. I don't personally put these down quite specifically like this, because especially when it comes to coaching, I'm not a great motivator. I've always been self-motivated, always. And so I find it extraordinarily hard to take the energy that I already have, which is my own self-motivation, to then motivate others. Because I think if someone's not motivated to get their goals, they need accountability, all that type of stuff, there's a bigger issue at play, and that's not where I want to help folks. Like, I probably can, but it's just a drain of my energy. I'd rather go with the people that are, yep, I get that, bang, let's freaking go, and get stuff organized, rather than the folks that are like, no, I need motivating. Can you please check in on me every day to get things done? Like, that's just not me, and I will never do that. I can't stand the thought of it. So that's why I'm also quite loath to put these types of guarantees in there when it comes to, by this time frame, you should have had this done. By month number 6, you should, be making $1 trillion per day. I don't really put those in there, but each to their own, might decide that this is relevant for you as well. Social proof integration, client results, before and after metrics, if you have those types of things as well. Industry comparisons, and again, this is a bit of a hit and miss. I don't typically do those because I think, especially in my space, I really don't want to draw attention to my competitors. And I think, as marketers, we're always able to spin the good stuff, if you know what I mean. And so, everyone's vying for attention, everyone's vying for the results and all that type of stuff. And I think you sort of run the risk when you're doing that type of stuff of just getting folks to go elsewhere anyway. So I probably wouldn't bother too much with that. But again, this is in my coaching space. It might be a little bit different if you're a service-based business. You might decide that actually, you know what, I can get this particular service done for $1,000 per month, where I know that other companies are charging like 3 to 5, right? And so you can draw a comparison in that way. And an example, the average client saves 30% on ad spend while increasing conversion by 45%, right? If you're in advertising, for argument's sake. So, risk value ratio, so show investment amount compared to expected returns, include guarantees and assurances if you're so inclined. I personally don't add guarantees to my content or my offers anymore, mainly because I can't control human nature and I refuse to. And so with that in mind, I also want people to not have one foot out the door. I don't want folks to jump into my coaching and go, oh, that's great, but at least if I don't like it, I can get out. It's not about keeping them in there or keeping their money, anything like that. It's that I know for myself, if I have gone full throttle at something and I'm fully invested, both monetarily and mentally, then I'm going to go get those results, right? If people have like one foot, like, oh yeah, I'll just see what the water's like before I dive in. If they have that approach, they will probably not do anything with the information and with your guidance, and then all of a sudden they start to blame yourself, and then all of a sudden that reflects on the results of the rest of your people inside your coaching, as well as the results of the program overall, right? So for example, it could be 5K investment, expected 15K return in 90 days. And again, do your homework, do what's right for you, just be across the legalities behind making claims. Like I say, I'm very cautious of it, and I make less sales as a result, because everyone's like, if I can go, hey, I will help you go from 20K to 100K in 30 days or your money back. Like, if I did that for a coach, then of course I'm going to make more money, right? But I don't want those folks that need that type of stuff to happen in that type of time frame, because I'm after folks that are a little bit more chilled in their approach. They see the long game, they're prepared to play it, which I think is business generally speaking. Risk reversal elements, again, guarantees, trial periods, success metrics, things like that, right? Now, number 4 is information flow optimization. And so, to borrow a line that I'm paraphrasing from one of my mentors, basically as this idea of like moving the information line forward. And so what that means is that if we look through a typical sales model where it's like, okay, I'm a consumer and I go and I watch this particular video and then I book a call with the team, call funnel as I was discussing earlier, or someone's DM'd me like a setter and they're like, hey, you smell awesome. You should jump on this call with this guy. I'm like, okay, fine. And so then what happens though is that there's a retention of all this information. And even though a lot of the sales material that's out there that gets taught, it's like this thing of like, if someone asks you a question, well, what's the price? It's like, hey, why are you on there? Well, I'll get to that in a moment, but I've got to first work out if I can actually help you, right? And so that's a lot of the kind of sales attitude that comes about. I think that's sort of bullshit. I've always really not enjoyed that type of element of the sales process, so I don't do it, right? And so what we want to do is we want to bring the information line forward. So if that's the line that says, hey, I'm a buyer behind that. So instead of like, oh, by the way, unless you jump on this call, unless you do this, then you're going to get the information, but not until, right? So what we want to do is we're going to go open kimono, and we want to go like, here's the information, here's how it can help you out, here's the price, here's the structure, what questions do you have? Fill your boots. And if you want to jump on board, here's the deadline to get in, right? Or here's the maximum capacity I've got, whatever it is. So anyway, the way that you do this is pre-qualifying through content. If you guys have heard, I've maybe mentioned 2 to 3 times what it costs to work with me throughout this presentation. Now, it's not me trying to do some ninja thing, right? It's quite literally because I'm being transparent about that. So when you see the offer doc, if you guys click it down below and you'll see that, and you see, okay, if I want to work with Jamie, it actually can get started from pretty cheap. It's pretty cool, right? But it's no surprises because I've already told you, basically. So you're pre-qualifying a lot of that. You're also calling out who you can serve, who you don't want to serve. I've also made mention, in fact, like, if you need accountability, I'm not your guy. I'm really sorry. Like, if you do need that, that's, don't go forward. Hopefully my information helps you out, but I'm not going to be able to help you out from a coaching perspective, right? So pre-qualifying through your content, educational materials up front. Hopefully some of you guys are going to get a ton of value out of that. And look, while I'm at it as well, I know most of you that watch this, you're not going to hit like, you're not going to subscribe, and that's completely cool. But if you did get any value, if you are getting any value whatsoever at this point, I would absolutely love it if you did drop a comment, let me know, hit the like button, and of course the subscribe if you want to stay up to date with more things like that. It really helps my channel out, and because I have a really low self-esteem, it really helps my ego as well. So if you did want to do that, you guys would be absolute legends. Right, moving forward, clear boundary setting. So often I'll get folks that just want to connect, and as part of their wanting to connect thing, they want to hop on calls, and I'm like, no way, man. My charge out rate's $500 an hour for consulting. I'm not going to hop on a call. Like, even if it's free, that's fine. I'm technically losing out as far as I'm concerned, right? So I make these boundaries apparent to my audience, so that way they know when they're in my coaching container that this is what's set. It's you get this, you don't get that. If you want extra, you want that, bang, let's talk about it. We can look at that down the track, but not before. Expectations management as well. I always tell folks, this game is harder than it looks, but it's really fucking worth it. Right? You can earn the most amazing amounts of money doing this. You can help people out in a genuine basis, but it is really difficult. It is it is not as easy as what the brochure says, right? If you look at the typical marketing stuff out there, it's usually the other way around. Why? Because that's our innate desire for ease. That's how we're programmed as humans. And so I don't do that, right? I set expectations. I say basically, look, if you're going to jump into my world, it's going to be difficult. You're going to have to work your butt off for a little bit. You're going to have to go through a season where things aren't going to make a whole bunch of sense necessarily, but at the end of it, you will have a system to acquiring high-ticket clients. You will be a more fulfilled, happier entrepreneur as a result, and that's the expectation, right? So, systems for information delivery, of course, we all know this. If you're a coach, Kajabi's, or in my case, I've got group.app, school, whatever it is, right? ClickFunnels, yada yada, do all the same thing. Automated nurture sequences in some cases. So you've got email marketing in the back end that's nurturing folks, or even chatbots for that matter. SMS follow-ups, things like that. I'll just give an example there. It's really just one of my main pages there. It's called monetiseyourtribe.com, and there's an option there to basically get on my newsletter as well as hopping into my community. So if you want to check that out, you're welcome to. Number 5, audience targeting and content strategy. So look, you need to be consistent with your audience identification, right? And so for many years, I was working with affiliates, and although I still have affiliates and it's part of my world, the main folks that I'm aiming to help these days is coaches, consultants, and folks that have an online business that they really feel like they could be monetizing better, basically. And so I'm consistently calling these folks out, right? You would have heard me mention this a couple of times throughout this presentation, and of course anything else that you've seen of mine online as well. Pain point messaging. So again, some of you might be experiencing pain points from watching this. Maybe my dulcet tones are a pain point enough. No, just kidding. But in all seriousness, you might think, yeah, actually, this guy kind of makes sense, because I've been looking to, get off the calls. Like I hate that my calendar is not something I can control anymore. Aspiration alignment, like I say, I've mentioned things about how I don't really chase people around. So again, that is designed to help to teach my audience what I need as part of my job and what I expect as well. Clear qualification criteria as well. So look, I still take folks that are at ground zero, but of course my preference is to work with folks that are 3 to 5K plus per month in their coaching and consulting businesses from there. And the reason being is that there's usually a hard part that you have to go through to go from 0 to 1K or 2K, 5K, 10K, but it's really a lot easier. I know this sounds like a bit kind of weird, but it's really a lot easier to go from like 5K up to 20K per month as a coach, consultant, etc. Right? And it's usually just a couple of tweaks we can make. So that's part of my qualification criteria. Whoa, what the hell? Sorry, folks. Damn, lost my mojo. Where were we? Clarity. Oops, sorry. That's what happens when you break your stuff. Information. There we go. Okay. So regular content theme. So educational. Hopefully this is educational for some folks. Inspirational. So that's a lot of the time going to be your short form, or like when you had some sort of epiphany that you're giving, things that you've learned from being in the trenches that you can kind of talk back to, if you know what I mean. Case study. So often I will put out a case study of a student that went from say 0 to his first 10K month, and first 10K collected in 49 days. I'll talk about other ones where one of my clients, they banked 2.4 mil. They credit me with helping them attain around about 1.1 mil in their first year or so through the content, schedule, and plan that I gave them as well, right? So I talk about these things in my content, and that just shows living proof of like, hey, I can actually help folks along the way as well. Behind the scenes, so I haven't done too many of those. I've done a little bit because I've talked about the newsletter that I'm setting up. Need to do a few more of these as well, but I'm going to probably dive into that. And that's really just like, hey, here's what I got up to, this is what I'm building, this is the downside, this is the good side. If you want to follow along, let me know. Results showcases. Again, that's, hey, by the way, here's what client B did. So if a client makes a high ticket sale, or they lock arms with me, join forces, I'll often mention that as well with their permission, just to kind of like prove to the audience that people are jumping into my coaching, things like that, and that they have been able to achieve certain things along the way as well. Now, to make sales, we must build trust. It is absolutely paramount that we do that. And this whole process that you're uncovering here is really predicated on building tons of trust with your audience as well. So first and foremost, there's something called Google's 4-7-11 rule for brand trust. Now, this is something that I first learned about in a book called Oversubscribed by a guy called Daniel Priestley. He's an Australian guy living in the UK, I believe. Really, really good book. I've probably absorbed that maybe 3 or 4 times. I got both the hard copy and the Audible. Absolutely love it. But one of the things he talks about, and I'm going to suggest you go find your own citation for this, but it's according to Google's Digital Consumer Experience Study. That is a mouthful. Brand trust is built through visibility in 4 different places. Okay? Now, if hypothetically you're on the likes of Facebook, it could actually be one platform, right? You could show up on a profile and in a story and in a group and in a reel, right? And in DM, so technically you've got 5, I guess. So that's an example there. But, social media platforms altogether. Now, I'm a massive fan of staying focused, and I think one of the issues that I help folks with, and I know something that I did for many years myself, is I tried to be everywhere at once. And so I was like, like a little marionette, or like a puppeteer who was trying to operate about 500 marionettes at the same time. Like, just didn't work, right? And so I'm always a massive fan of like, just sharpen your axe on one platform and then leverage the results that you get to then go to the next, right? And that's kind of what I'm doing now. So I've done most of my stuff on Facebook through Facebook communities. I'm now leveraging that to go into like the threads. I've got obviously my email list. I've got YouTube channels. I've got various things, LinkedIn as well at the moment. And so it's about spreading that out over time. But I think if you are watching this, you're kind of like in the earlier stages. Don't spread yourself too thin. I cannot even tell you how important this particular rule is for you, right? So make sure that you do that. There's also things like emails, blogs, podcasts, all that type of stuff. Now, the second part of it is, and these don't have to be all together, these can be one or the other, right? 7 hours of content consumption. Now, I probably should mark this up here because this is probably the most important element of basically buying stuff, right? Is I hope that at some point, at this point in this video, someone is watching at this stage, right? So that means that I've only got another like 6.5 hours to go and then you buy my stuff. No, it doesn't work like that. But point being is that you do need to put out value out there and your people need to be able to consume that content, whether that is written, whether it's verbal, whether it's video, all of it works, right? Choose whatever one that is, I guess, better for you to create, what you feel more passionate about creating, and just create the crap out of it, right? And so that's the whole idea. We want more consumption. So ask yourself, how sticky is the content? YouTube is great because the content lasts for, depending on the keywords and competition, yada, yada, yada. It can be anywhere from 2 to 5 years. I've actually got a video which I put out in 2019, still really relevant, still getting daily views and monthly views and all that type of stuff as well, which is really cool. Content variety for different learning styles. So sometimes I joke around a little bit. Sometimes I'm quite serious. Sometimes I'm quite pragmatic. Sometimes I'm just all over the place. It really depends, and people are going to resonate with different things as well as me sharing some of the background of my journey along the way to get here. Engagement metrics, tracking. I don't do this as much as I possibly should, but it is something that I try to keep an eye on randomly here and there because I want to know, like, okay, if I've got one metric that says, okay, got a really good click-through rate through this video, for example, why was that? Was it keyword specific? Did I really do a great job on the thumbnail? Like, what are we talking about here? Things like that, right? So, 11 meaningful touch points. So it could be content interaction. It could be if I'm on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or what do we call X? I think we have to call it Threads, etc. If I'm constantly in the forefront of someone's mind by engaging in their content, that is really, really, really powerful, right? We can all do it. It's really, really simple, but that's also part of it, right? So content interaction, number one, they like or comment on things. Social engagement, as I said, just engaging in their content. Email opens or clicks. Here's something else though. What I've come to learn is that a lot of the times I won't necessarily open an email, but I will see that person's name. It will make me think of them. Right, so then when I see them on YouTube, when I'm looking by, and I'm like, okay, now I've got multiple touch points in one day from that person, even if I haven't opened their email. So it's kind of powerful, but subliminal. Website visits, feel free to go to jamiegardiner.com if you want to check that out. Go check out what I'm about, or monetiseyourtribe.com is my other one. Community participation. I have a Facebook community. I absolutely love it. It's about 5,200 amazing folks in there. It has helped me make hundreds of thousands of dollars per year for many years, and it was the center point of what I teach a lot of my students, is that it's just really powerful to have a community. Okay, so but you don't have to, it's just an idea anyway. But again, if you got that touch point within your community, it's pretty powerful. So Adobe came out with this customer survey some time ago, and basically what they discovered is that a previous customer is 9 times more likely to purchase in future. Now, I am going somewhere with all this. Hopefully this is starting to make sense, but they're 9 times more likely to purchase again, right? Their conversion rate of a customer is 60 to 70% more likely to buy than a cold prospect. And so the easiest way for you to start to acquire high ticket clients without sales calls is to sell a low ticket offer. Right? An entry point offer could be $5, could be $1, could be $10, could be a couple of hundred, could be 1,000 even, right? And again, the reason why I preface this by saying things like consumption is because if we have someone consuming our lower end products, we're able to give a disproportionate amount of value, which we should for all of our products, by the way. But if we do so, then we are opening their mind because they're more malleable and more open to getting further help, because we've been able to help them out with something in the initial stages, right? It's that whole thing of Newton's law. What gets in motion stays in motion, whatever that specific thing is. Obviously, I'm no physician as it transpires. But when I think of things like value ladder design, right? It could be as simple as like, how do we maximize the average order value per singular transaction? That's one, right? But it doesn't have to be. It could be even a singular transaction, but they consume the information, then they are now becoming a buyer. And like I say, because of the metrics I just mentioned, it means that a buyer is just way easier to monetize in the future as well, right? So this is kind of the premise of what we're doing here. Ascension model. So they go from here to here to here, they're climbing up the ladder, so to speak. Customer journey mapping, so again, it's kind of figuring out, like, okay, they have bought a low ticket thing and it's cost however much, and then what's the uptake rate to get to this point here, which is high ticket customer, and then again repeat customer, and then referral customer later on, right? As in they're referring customers to us. So offer cadence strategy. Now you want to have a weekly rhythm, monthly rhythm, and quarterly rhythm, I think. So weekly rhythm, content rhythm, for example, could be got your core content pieces that you're speaking about, and you might only have like 3 or 4, right? If they are in alignment with the core offer that you're promoting, if they are in alignment with the core offer you're promoting, and you only speak to those 4 things, now you've got all these subcategories that you can put under those 4 main categories, right? And that's all you have to do. Your social media presence. How are you putting yourself out there? How prolific are you? Even if you're only on one platform, how much more prolific could you be out there? And I don't necessarily mean just putting more and more and more content. I mean, how are you reaching more people? Is it manually just going after folks here, there, and everywhere? Email newsletters, like I say, is something that, although I have been in email marketing for a very long time, email newsletters are relatively new to me, so doing that at the moment as well. But that also helps to have a regular format of like, hey, here's some information, hopefully it helps you out. Community engagement as well, again, coming back to the idea of having a community. If you can get a community together, this is why these types of processes are so brilliant, is that you do not need thousands and thousands of leads. In fact, most times you probably don't need more leads. What you do need, however, is to build the depth of relationship with your audience, right? And one of the best ways to do that is with a community, sorry. So whether it's school or Facebook or anything for that matter, they just work so well. It's been a reason why I've been able to help folks monetize to 10K with only 73 people in their group, right? It's just crazy. Plus and beyond, that's not even one of the bigger figures either, but just gives you a bit of an idea there. Monthly special offers, so limited time promotions, exclusive access periods, bonus stacking, right? We all seen the Russell Brunson stack slide type stuff, doing that type of thing as like a random bonus, early bird incentives as well. So at the moment, it's coming up to Black Friday very soon, in another week and a half or whatever it is. I have an anti-Black Friday sales rebellion happening at the moment, where I'm basically promoting my Ultimate Marketing Mastermind program prior to Black Friday landing, and so therefore there's an early bird incentive for that with a 67% discount. There's tons of bonuses on that, exclusive access periods as well, because they can actually only buy between those dates, then it's going to go up to $1,000 after that. Limited time promotions, all that type of stuff as well. Quarterly campaigns, so at the moment, so with the thing I'm rolling out at the moment, it is basically for a 4-week cohort as well as lifetime access to my program for, like, say, a whopping great discount. It's an insane offer, and I think I probably mispriced it, probably underpriced it, to be perfectly honest. But anyway, the whole idea is that it is likely, if it goes really well, I might roll that out again. Probably not at the same price, it'll be a higher price point, but I might roll that out again later on, next quarter, for example, right? So that means that I've now got a centralized thing that I can focus on. Theme-based promotions, season-specific offers. So, hey, we're coming into winter. Would anyone like this super special thing that I've got happening there as well? Results showcase, again, that just comes back to that flywheel effect of like showing your audience proof of concept that your stuff, that you have helped people, that the people that do lock arms with you are getting the results that you are claiming, and that's basically it, right? Community challenges as well. These are always good. If you get people to build energy around an idea or a theme of some kind, really, 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 really powerful stuff. So, guys, I appreciate you tuning in for this long. Really, really do respect your time and appreciate it. If you do get value out of this at any stage, like I say, absolutely love it. If you could drop a comment, let me know. That would be absolutely amazing. Implementation framework. So number 1, phase 1, foundation phase, we want to lock in our offer. Okay, I do everything through a Google Doc, mainly because it's malleable. I can change it on the fly. It's just a little bit cleaner, in my opinion, than having to go to a sales page, although clearly I do have sales pages, and clearly I've had funnels and stuff that I've built out before as well. But you've got to get an MVO, minimum viable offer, right? Something that we talk about a lot in our industry, and it's just about taking the essence of what you're already selling. How do you map that out so that way people have access to that. Think about the pricing structure as well, depending on what people are needing. My offers range from $1,000 right up to 15,000. To give you a bit of an idea, with my Monetise Your Tribe, and there's a link below if you want to check that out as well. But with that, it's basically $1,200 up front to get involved in, and then it will kick through to $50 a week after, I think it's 90 days, right? So it does have that structure in place, and what that means is that from all intensive purposes, it gets the best of both worlds. A little bit of a high ticket thing plus a recurring element on that as well. Content calendar, so consider how you might want to put that together. What does it look like? Are you going to post 7 days a week? You can post 5, completely fine, either one, just stick to it. And your system set up, if you're going to get into things like funnels, etc., all that type of stuff, consider it, don't overthink it. There's no one that's like the best, in my opinion. They all have their goods, their bads. And I think people just get bogged down the weeds, like chopping and changing between providers all too often, in my opinion. So if you are going to go down that route, which by the way, I'd like to be abundantly clear, you do not need any technology to make this stuff work, right? You can build a 6-figure business with nothing more than a Stripe link, a Google Doc, and a Facebook group, right? Literally, that's it. If you want to start adding layers in to automate certain processes to pull yourself further away from the sales process, absolutely fine. You're probably going to want to do that at some point, but you certainly do not need to, right? So don't think, if you're starting to get involved in this stuff, that you need all these things to work, right? Biggest issue I see for folks, it's always a bold claim when people say that, one of the biggest issues I see is that folks will start to just go, okay, well, I've been working on my autoresponder sequence for ages. Now I'm working on my website. Now I'm working on my funnel. It's like, well, do you have an audience, right? That's kind of the most important part. If you've got an audience, you can sell them stuff. If you don't, then all that stuff is just pointless, waste of time. But it makes people's egos feel pretty good a lot of the time. Content creation phase. So, think about your core content pieces. One of the things that I've started doing, and I really enjoy it, is I'll write a daily email, or most daily emails, not every day. And as I'm writing that, I'll come up with a theme and I'll talk about that. And then basically I leverage that to then distribute that out to my other social media, right? So then I'll either do a little video, I'll send that as an X, Threads, map it out a little bit differently for LinkedIn, Facebook, all that type of stuff. But again, I want to make it abundantly clear that it is more important for you to stay focused if you haven't gained a bunch of traction, to stay focused on one platform first before moving on. But if you are at that point in your journey where you are starting to expand, then that's probably the easiest way you can do it. Like, create one piece of content and then figure out how you can then leverage that to distribute to the other ones. Automation setup, we're talking about email marketing here, for example. But there's also other things, like if you are doing short form video, can you get things like repurpose.io to then automatically spread it out to all the other networks? Does that help? Things like that. Tracking mechanisms. Don't need it. Again, I want to make that real clear. You don't need it to start with, but at some point you're probably going to want to get Google Analytics to see where your traffic's coming from and what you can pour more energy into, what might need fixing up, things like that as well. Optimization phase number 3. So it's really about testing and metrics, right? And it's basically still going on that process of just building your audience as much as you possibly can. I can't stress enough how impactful it is for you to start a community of any kind. It really is really, really impactful. And then eventually, if you want to get into it, you run into paid ads. You certainly do not need to. I've done pretty damn well without paid ads over the years. And even though I did run an ad agency for 3 to 4 years, running Facebook ads, it's not something that I've needed to the same degree for my online business and my brand. So don't feel like you have to get into that stuff just yet, right? Now, there is a downside of all the strategy. We're getting there. We're almost at crunch time. I appreciate you guys tuning in. So the downside of the strategy is, yes, it does have lower conversion rates. If I'm booking 10 sales calls a week, now what I will say, this is going to be, might roll a few eyes out there, but I can assure you that it is absolutely 100% accurate, is that at a certain point in my business, I was taking on a lot of one-on-one students, right? It was a really good offer. It was a 5K offer, really, really awesome offer. They got wicked results. And I still had a sales call in place. And so admittedly, I wasn't taking many calls, right? We're talking maybe 3 to 5 a week, absolute max. But during that time I was doing that, I was closing 70 to 80% of my sales calls with these people, right? 5K, 3 out of 5, bang, nice and easy. 4 out of 5 at times, nice and easy. And then when I moved over to the Google Doc stuff, the conversion rates dropped down, right? because people sometimes they need someone in front of them to help pick up the confidence that you have and your capacity to help them and their capacity to get the results, right? So your conversion rates will lower, okay? Just accept that that's a fact. One of the other issues that I've found, especially when it comes to these hybrid models, so whether you're going on like a recurring pricing or you're doing that monthly or weekly, whatever it is, it tends to break, depending on who you're coaching, the results that they currently have, the momentum that they currently have, things like that, right? So what I've developed is a hybrid approach, but even then, still got this issue where, I might make a few sales, but I don't have, especially at the moment, because my business is going through an evolution, I don't have the same lead flow that I once had in my business. So that means that because of that, there's a natural attrition rate with those payment plans, right? So it means that you're always having to make sure that you've got plenty of fresh leads coming in order to then fight that battle against the attrition rate that will naturally occur with those recurring pricing models, right? So yeah, people will go ahead and do it anyway because humans are humans, but I can assure you it looks great on paper, and unless you have that caveat, like I say, it's not as sticky as you would think. And also you can't force people to get back to you, right? I can't sit there and go, hey, I've sent a Google Doc to someone. I can't DM them and go, why haven't they got back to me yet? I can say that, but I can't force them to get back to me. Now that's the issue. And so that's the downside. These things, they mean that you might end up making less money, but here's the little bonus part about that. You might be making less to start with, but your profit margins are higher. The fun that you're having in your business is higher. Your calendars are completely free, right? You get to choose exactly when you hop on a call and when you don't, right? You can be a little bit selective about who you bring on board as well. And that's one of the benefits of it, right? And I know what I'd rather have at this point in my life, at least anyway. So in conclusion, look, this philosophy and this way of doing things is perfect for solopreneurs not looking to build a big team of setters and closers. And there's arguments for and against, I will admit. My personal opinion and that of many of my students now is I just don't want a huge business. I don't need to be making $50 million a year with a 40-person team. I'd rather have a solopreneur business that I can manage in my spare time. Right, we're not being chained to my computer day in day out for 20 hours a day, right? Not having to manage dozens of people. I'd rather just have a solopreneur business that is highly profitable, massive margins, a lot of fun to deliver, a lot of fun to sell, and that's me, right? Look, it is also a way for you to completely give a ton of value to your audience. Now, some of the folks that have watched this, if you have got to this point, thank you, by the way, I really appreciate it. Some of you might want a bit of extra assistance, right? And so therefore you might be looking to get my help. Some of you will take this and you'll go, oh, this makes a bunch of sense. I'm going to go roll out a low-end workshop now, sell it to my existing audience, look to leverage supply and demand on the back of that, and then have a close down of my offer for the 72 hours after I've delivered the workshop or a week after the workshop, right? So now I'm going to take on 5 people at this price that have paid for X and been delivered that thing. Oh, got it, right? And some of you will go ahead and do that, and then you'll be off to the races, right? Others, that's completely fine. You might need a couple of those things ironed out, or you might decide you're too lazy to go create all the stuff yourself. You might just want to use my templates, in which case you can jump into my Monetise Your Tribe, and I can help you with all that stuff as well. So look, if you did get value, thank you so much for sticking around. I really appreciate your time, and feel free to hit the subscribe button and drop a comment. I always love to get your feedback, so much appreciated. And check out the link there if you're interested in getting some assistance building out this type of business model yourself. Other than that, guys, thank you so much once again. You have an awesome one, and hopefully got a ton of value out of today's presentation. Cheers.